Walter White from Breaking Bad is probably one of the most famous chemistry teachers and drug dealers the world has seen so far. Over the course of 6 seasons, he got deep into selling his famous blue meth, and he started doing things that were more and more dangerous. From making drugs to seriously hurting people, Walt made a lot of bad choices, and in real life, every choice has a price though. If we look at what he did through the eyes of the law, Walter broke many of them. So let's dive in and see what would happen if Walter White was charged for his crimes. The first crime Walt commits happens right at the start of the show and is the starting shot of Walt's criminal career.
But you know the business, and I know the chemistry. I'm thinking maybe you and I could partner up.
It is when he offers Jesse to cook meth with him. Looking at it through the eyes of the law, this would definitely be a conspiracy to manufacture illegal substances, which in this case in methamphetamine. By making the offer to Jesse and planning the meth production, the crime already starts even before the actual production of the meth begins. While it is hard to catch someone for this crime, the punishment for that is counted as a third-degree felony, which would bring Walt in prison for up to 3 years and a fine of $5,000. But that's just the beginning. Once they start cooking their first batch of meth, that's when their next crime happens. After they drove out to the desert and cooked their first batch of meth is when Walt makes himself guilty of the manufacturing of illegal substances. During their first cooking session, they produced 2 pounds of meth. Since that is higher than the 500-gram threshold, they'd be prosecuted under federal law. Looking at the circumstances, it can get quite troublesome for Walt. On the one side, he has lung cancer and wants to provide for his family. On the other side, he works in a public school and has extremely good knowledge of chemistry. Given these facts, Walt would probably be looking at a sentence of 20 years and a fine of $4 million. And the crimes in this episode don't seem to end. After Emilio and Crazy 8 enter his RV, Walt creates a chemical reaction with red phosphorus which releases a highly toxic gas, resulting in Emilio's death. This could easily be classified as murder, however, looking at the intent, this might change. C. Walter acts in a heat-of-the-moment situation and he could pledge for voluntary manslaughter, and with a good lawyer and his backstory, the court might believe him. Voluntary manslaughter is usually charged with 15 years in prison. If we keep going down the rabbit hole, he then kidnaps Crazy 8, and together with Jesse, they trap him in his basement. While kidnapping is already punishable, we need to take a look at what happens next. After they locked Crazy 8 with a bike lock to a pole in Jesse's basement, Walt ends up strangling him to death. This would likely be classified as second-degree murder, as it was an intentional act, but not necessarily pre-planned. Paired with the kidnapping, Walt would be looking at a life sentence without the possibility of parole. In other states, he would get the death penalty. Another time Walt was taking part in the death of someone was when Walter watched Jane overdose and suffocate to death, which became one of the most polarizing moments in the entire series. While he didn't directly cause her death, his lack of action makes him guilty. Legally, this could be seen as being an accessory to murder. As mitigating circumstance, it could be seen that he was under huge emotional distress. Yet the law is pretty clear in that situation. Failing to act can be just as bad as a direct action. For this, Walt would face at least 15 years. After Jesse and Walt run out of materials to produce their meth, they decide to steal methylamine out of a factory. While their attempt looks stupid on camera and Hank later makes fun of the robbers because they don't figure out that they can roll the barrel, it doesn't change the fact that this is armed robbery. During their mission, they lock a security guard up in the toilet, which also adds to the crime. Looking at the situation, they would definitely be looking at 10 years in prison together with $250,000 in fines. Now, after these hard crimes, let's take a look at a few of the smaller crimes he has committed. Do you still remember Ted Beneke, the old boss Skyler slept with? Walt also committed crimes against him. In a moment of anger, Walt drives over to his house and physically assaults him. And while he definitely has his reasons to do so, but this doesn't change the fact that it's assault, and therefore he can get up to 5 years of imprisonment. Given the circumstances and the minority of the crime, he would at maximum get 1 year of imprisonment and a fine of $1,000. Another one of the smaller crimes he has done is probably one of the most famous scenes in Breaking Bad, which is the pizza scene. This happens during the time he is trying to get back with Skylar and tries to apologize with the pizza. After she kicks him out of the house, he gets extremely angry and throws the pizza on the roof of their garage. While it's not a major crime, he can still be convicted for the destruction of property. It would probably be classified as a petty misdemeanor, and the fines for that in New Mexico would be $500, and he has to pay for the cleanup. Now let's get back to some worse crimes again. In the episode Crazy Handful of Nothing, Walt goes into the office of Tuco after they have badly beaten up Jesse. Instead of offering Tuco more meth, he comes with fulminated mercury that he uses to blow the entire office up. And while it's an impressive scene, the usage of explosives in a civilian area, even for self-defense, is a grave offense in the eyes of the law. For this explosive encounter with Tuco, Walt would definitely be getting a life sentence and a fine of $500,000. Later in the show, they meet the slick lawyer Saul Goodman. A lot of people don't remember this scene, but before Saul becomes their lawyer, he is the lawyer of Badger. Walt and Jesse are absolutely not happy with the legal consultation he gives Badger, and therefore they kidnap him. So another time, Walt would face punishment for kidnapping. However, this time he didn't kill anybody. Even though it was just for a short duration, the court would still see it as a grave offense, especially because he threatened Saul with a gun. So he'd probably be punished with 10 years. The next crime on our bucket list after he purchased the car wash. As you probably know, he doesn't buy the car wash because he wants to build a new legal business out of it, but he wants to use it for money laundering. The law definitely sees this as a sophisticated financial crime because it's designed to make illegally gained money appear legal. Given the amount of money Walt is laundering there, the court would probably not care about his noble intentions to do it for his family and punish him severely. Looking at the punishment, he would definitely get 20 years of imprisonment and a $10 million fine. And at the same court trial, he would probably also be punished for tax evasion. Since Walt doesn't report any of his income, and while the reason is clear, it's still a major crime. Looking at the law, it doesn't differentiate between legal and illegal earnings when it comes to taxation. Every dollar must be accounted for. For a tax evasion on this scale, he would face 5 years in prison and a fine of up to $250,000 plus. He has to pay back the owed taxes. Now let's talk about the most important and biggest crime Walt commits throughout the entire show, which is drug dealing. The exact legal term here would be the distribution of illegal substances, and given the scale Walt is doing it in, no court would care about his goals and reasons. I didn't do the exact meth, but over his career, Walt is probably selling multiple tons of meth, so the court would definitely go with the maximum punishment, which is life imprisonment and $10 million in fines. But it doesn't stop there. After Walt got caught, he decided to commit his next crime, which happens when he goes to the vacuum cleaner guy to get a new identity and hide from law enforcement. By taking on a false identity, it's committing a federal crime and is considered as identity theft under federal law. Given that he is running away from other crimes he has committed, he would be looking at the maximum sentence, which are 15 years in prison and a fine of $500,000. When Walt returns, he gets himself an M60 machine gun right before he goes to visit the Aryan Brotherhood. Given the way he is getting the M60 machine gun, he would be guilty of the possession of unregistered firearms, and looking at the classification of the gun, he would be facing 7 years in prison and a fine of $300,000. And the last crime he commits is the killing of the Aryan Brotherhood members. On his killing spree, there are multiple counts of first-degree murder, and every single one of them would give him a life sentence. Since he kills 9 of them with the machine gun and later on kills Jack with another weapon, he would be getting 10 life sentences for this. At the end of the show, Walt would be charged with 13 life sentences, 106 years of prison, and $25,608,500 as fines. And these haven't even been all the crimes he has committed. If you are interested in seeing all of the crimes, make sure to subscribe to our channel. And with that being said, thanks for watching, and until next time.